In bustling Hong Kong, a city of neon lights and endless crowds, there are stories whispered in the shadows, cases so chilling that they are forever etched into the city's collective memory. Among them lies a tale that would come to be known as one of the 10 most mysterious cases of Hong Kong. The story of a teenage girl whose life ended in unthinkable horror and whose remains were hidden in the most unexpected of places, a butcher's stall. It began like any other day in April 2008. The city was alive with its usual chaos, street markets overflowing with chatter, commuters rushing through MTR stations, the smell of food drifting from open stalls. To the outside world, everything seemed ordinary. But beneath this facade, a dark crime was unfolding that would soon terrify an entire population. The victim was not a politician, not a wealthy socialite, but a 16-year-old girl named Wong Ka Mui. Bright, ambitious, yet quietly burdened with struggles she could never fully share, Ka Mui's life was cut short in the most grotesque and tragic way imaginable. What began as a missing persons case quickly spiraled into one of the most shocking investigations Hong Kong had ever seen. Rumors swirled through the city like wildfire. Some whispered that her body had been chopped apart and mixed into pork, sold openly in the wet markets of Kowloon. Shoppers began to look suspiciously at every cut of meat they bought, fear gnawing at their stomachs. Could it be true? Could human flesh have been passed off as food? This was not just another crime story. It was a case that blurred the line between urban legend and brutal reality, forcing the people of Hong Kong to confront a nightmare that felt straight out of a horror film. And it all started with a worried mother walking into a police station on April 29, 2008. On the morning of April 29, 2008, a distressed mother walked into the New Territories police station in Hong Kong. Her name was Mrs. Wong, and beside her stood her elder daughter, clinging tightly to her arm. Their faces told the story before their words did: fear, exhaustion, and a quiet dread that something terrible had happened. 3 days earlier, on April 26th, Mrs. Wong's youngest daughter, Wong Ka Mui, had vanished without a trace. At first, the family tried to convince themselves it was nothing unusual. Ka Mui was only 16, but she was growing independent. Maybe she was staying at a friend's house. Maybe she needed space. But when hours stretched into days and every attempt to call her phone went unanswered, their hope turned into panic. Her sister recalled the last time she saw Ka Mui. It was late at night, just before midnight. The two had been chatting in their small apartment in Tai Wo Hao. Everything seemed normal. No arguments, no tears, no sign that Ka Mui was planning anything unusual. They both said goodnight and retreated to their separate rooms. By morning, Ka Mui was gone. The family admitted that Ka Mui had occasionally stayed overnight at her boyfriend's place in the past, but those days were behind her. She was no longer in that relationship, and she had never disappeared for days without contacting her family. This time was different. The police filed it as a missing person case, something they saw far too often with teenagers. Yet as they began their initial checks, details about Ka Mui's life started to emerge, details her mother and sister had never known. Behind her quiet demeanor and school achievements lay secrets that would soon expose her to grave danger. What no one realized then was that Ka Mui's disappearance was only the beginning of a nightmare. Within days, Hong Kong would be shaken by whispers of dismemberment, butcher stalls, and the possibility that ordinary citizens had unknowingly purchased meat laced with human flesh. To understand how Wong Ka Mui's story turned so tragic, one must first look at the life she had lived up to that point. On the surface, she was like any other teenage girl, bright, with a sharp mind and a quiet determination. But beneath that surface was a history marked by loneliness and fragile dreams. Ka Mui's childhood was not easy. Her parents divorced when she was only 3, and her mother later remarried a much older man in Hong Kong. For years, Ka Mui remained behind in mainland China, separated from her mother and sister. It wasn't until 2005, at the age of 14, that she finally joined them in Hong Kong. By then, she was essentially a stranger in her own family, reunited, yet never quite fitting into the life they had built. Despite these challenges, she excelled academically. At her secondary school, she earned scholarships and even won awards for reading competitions. Teachers recognized her intelligence, yet her classmates often described her as withdrawn, stubborn, and difficult to approach. She carried herself with an independence that others her age rarely had, but it also meant she often walked alone. Her relationship with her stepfather was strained, filled with frequent quarrels. Ka Mui longed for beauty, glamour, and a better life, something far away from the cramped government housing estate they called home. She tried to chase this dream by enrolling in modeling classes, but lacking the looks that agencies prized, she found herself rejected again and again. It was around this time that her life began to change. Ka Mui told her family she was working part-time in the fashion world, even claiming she was a model's assistant earning a modest income. In truth, she had stepped into a far more dangerous realm. Through online forums and late-night chats, Ka Mui began meeting men for money. At first, it was occasional, but as debts from a fraudulent modeling agency mounted, debts she was threatened to repay, her involvement deepened. She was only 16, but she had learned to live a double life, a dutiful daughter at home, and in secret, a girl for hire in the city's underbelly. Her mother and sister never suspected. They still believed she was pursuing dreams of modeling and makeup artistry. This hidden life would soon lead her into the orbit of strangers whose intentions were far darker than she could have ever imagined. And among them was a man whose actions would turn her disappearance into one of the most horrifying murder cases Hong Kong had ever seen. As police delved deeper into Wong Ka Mui's recent activities, the portrait of her final days began to emerge. It was a fragile timeline pieced together from phone records, online chats, and the testimony of those who had seen her last. One name quickly surfaced: Bang, a young programmer who admitted to being one of Ka Mui's regular clients. He had first contacted her through an online forum in April 2008, and soon their relationship extended beyond business. They exchanged messages frequently, met up, and on at least 2 occasions, spent nights together. On April 27th, the day Ka Mui vanished, Bang recalled seeing her at a hotel in Sham Shui Po. She was dressed in black, carrying a yellow handbag. He remembered that she seemed tired, withdrawn, not her usual self. They talked for a while, lay side by side, and eventually dozed off. The next morning, they left the hotel together around 9 o'clock. He paid her a fee, they said goodbye, and he assumed he would see her again. But that was the last confirmed sighting of Wong Ka Mui alive. Later that same day, her phone activity painted a troubling picture. At 1:04 p.m., Ka Mui placed a brief 53-second call from Sham Shui Po MTR station. The number she dialed was from a prepaid mobile, untraceable, registered to no one. Investigators later discovered that this same number had been used earlier that morning to arrange a meeting with her, someone who instructed her to call upon arrival at the station. That call would be her final communication. After 1:04 p.m., her phone fell silent. For her mother and sister, the absence of any message was unimaginable. Ka Mui always sent word if she would be home late. For the police, this sudden blackout suggested something far darker, that the person she was meant to meet may have been the one responsible for her disappearance. As the days dragged on without a trace, the search grew frantic. Flyers went up, her face appeared in the newspapers, and whispers began to spread. Whispers that her fate was far more sinister than anyone dared to admit. It would take an unexpected confession from someone not even directly involved to break the silence and lead investigators into the darkest depths of the case. The case seemed to be stalling until May 6th, when a man walked into a police station with a story that would change everything. His name was Ah Duck, and his demeanor was anxious, almost terrified. He claimed that his close friend of 10 years, Ding Kui Tai, had confessed to something unspeakable. According to Ah Duck, on the night of April 27th, the very day Wong Ka Mui vanished, he had received a string of frantic phone calls from Ding. On the line, Ding's voice was erratic, fueled by drugs and alcohol. He said he had killed a girl during an encounter, strangling her after she repeatedly murmured that she wanted to die. He described the details with chilling detachment: the foam at her mouth, the way her body went limp, and the overwhelming sense of panic that followed. But the horror did not end there. Ding confessed that he had dismembered the body, spending hours cutting it apart. Some parts, he claimed, had been flushed down the toilet. Others were hidden in pork at a local butcher stall in Kowloon. He even admitted to peeling the skin from her face, saying he couldn't bear to look at her expression. At first, Ah Duck dismissed these claims as the ramblings of a drug-addled mind. But when he saw the news reports about Wong Ka Mui's disappearance and realized the dates matched, dread consumed him. Convinced that his friend's drunken confession might have been the truth, he went to the police. Investigators immediately took his testimony seriously. They traced the mysterious prepaid phone number that had contacted Ka Mui back to an internet cafe computer linked to Ding Kui Tai's residence in Sham Shui Po. It was the breakthrough they needed. That very night, detectives surrounded the apartment block. At around 11 p.m., Ding emerged from the shadows of his building, unaware of the net closing in around him. Officers pounced, restraining the 24-year-old man before he had the chance to flee. Inside his apartment, the scene was gruesome. Bloodstains lingered on the bathroom tiles, the door frame, even on a CD left inside a computer drive. DNA tests confirmed what the detectives already suspected. It all belonged to Wong Ka Mui. The flat in Sham Shui Po was no ordinary home. It was the crime scene of one of Hong Kong's most horrifying murders. And soon, Ding Kui Tai would reveal in his own words the full scope of what he had done. When confronted with the blood evidence inside his apartment, Ding Kui Tai could no longer deny what he had done. What followed was a confession so graphic, so horrifying, that even seasoned detectives struggled to believe it at first. He claimed that on April 27th, after meeting Wong Ka Mui at the MTR station, he brought her back to his flat in Sham Shui Po. They used drugs together, and at some point, he strangled her. Whether it was deliberate or an act fueled by narcotics, he insisted he could not remember clearly. What he did remember was the aftermath, the lifeless body of a 16-year-old girl lying on his bed. Panic set in, but only briefly. Within minutes, Ding's thoughts turned to concealment. He decided that the only way to erase what he had done was to destroy the body. For the next 6 hours, he methodically dismembered Ka Mui, treating her as though she were livestock. He described the process clinically, as if recalling a routine task. He flushed small pieces of flesh and organs down the toilet bit by bit, making sure to run water after each flush so nothing would clog. The larger bones he stripped clean, cutting away the flesh so they could pass as animal remains. Those he carried to a butcher's stall in Kowloon, mixing them with pork. And her head, perhaps the most haunting detail, he stuffed into a bag and threw into Victoria Harbor near the Kowloon ferry pier. For Hong Kong citizens, the revelation was almost too much to bear. Newspapers splashed the headlines, "A girl chopped up, her remains hidden among everyday food supplies."
People recoiled at the thought that they may have purchased meat tainted with human remains. For weeks, many refused to buy pork from local markets. The case blurred the line between urban legend and horrifying truth. Stories of human flesh hidden among butcher stalls had long existed in Hong Kong folklore. But now, those rumors had a real victim, a real name, Wong Ka Mui. As the details emerged in court, the city's collective fear turned to outrage. What could drive a young man to commit such barbarity? Was it the drugs, his troubled past, or something far darker lurking inside him all along? The answers would never fully satisfy the questions, but one thing was certain: the name Ding Q Tai would forever be etched into Hong Kong's criminal history, synonymous with a crime that turned the everyday act of buying meat into a nightmare.
In July 2009, more than a year after Wong Ka Mui's disappearance, the trial of Ding Ku Tai opened at Hong Kong's High Court. The courtroom was packed, journalists, grieving family members, and ordinary citizens all wanting to see the man whose crime had shaken the city. Ding stood accused of murder and preventing the lawful burial of a body. His defense attempted to argue that he had been under the influence of methamphetamine, his mind clouded, his memory fragmented. He claimed he could not recall the act of killing, only the aftermath. But the jury was unmoved. The brutality of the dismemberment, the calculated steps to dispose of Ka Mui's remains told a different story, one of cold-blooded intent. After 6 days of testimony, the verdict was clear. Ding Ku Tai was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. He received an additional 4 years for obstructing the proper burial of Wong Ka Mui's body. Outside the courtroom, the public's anger remained fierce. Many could not forget the grisly rumor that parts of Ka Mui's body had been mixed into pork at the markets. For months, butchers complained of plummeting sales, while shoppers eyed every cut of meat with suspicion. The very idea blurred the line between reality and nightmare, embedding itself in the collective psyche of Hong Kong. For Wong Ka Mui's family, the sentence brought little comfort. Her mother had lost a daughter, her sister had lost her closest confidant. The image of the bright, smiling 16-year-old, once full of ambition, dreaming of a better life, would forever be overshadowed by the grotesque way her life was taken. Years later, the case continues to haunt Hong Kong. It serves as a grim reminder of the dangers that lurk in the city's shadows, of how a teenager's search for independence and escape from hardship led her into the orbit of a man capable of unimaginable cruelty. Ding Ku Tai now lives out his days behind bars, but the echoes of his crime live on, not only in court documents and newspaper archives, but in the fear, sorrow, and unanswered questions he left behind. And for the people of Hong Kong, the memory of the girl hidden among the butcher's meat is something they will never truly forget.